Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Greetings, everybody. Wait, where's Gordon? I know he's here somewhere. Hold on. There he is. Hey, Gordon.
Hey, Matt. What's up?
Not much, man. What's going on with you?
Nothing much.
All right. Well, try to keep an eye on things, you know, little stressy at times, I suppose would be the word for it. Otherwise, you know, as usual, trying to stay hopeful, but you know, it's challenging. These are the times that try men's souls, as Thomas Paine had once said. I think this definitely qualifies as one of those times. We have definitely a few things to chat about. I'd like to get your take on. I heard Ali Larijani. It was just confirmed that he was indeed assassinated. He was killed, the head of the Supreme National Security Council. Mm-hmm. That was not too much of a surprise, I suppose. In some ways, he did kind of walk out into the parade in honor of the memory of Soleimani, General Soleimani, who had died back in January of 2020. So there was the Quds parade, and he chose to walk out publicly with a few other officials. His son as well, a prestigious doctor, was also with him when they got shot, or I guess their house was blown up the following day, and it was confirmed, I guess, last night or yesterday afternoon. It's a bit of a disappointment, though, since Larijani was definitely the key guy who was meeting up with Putin, meeting up with the Chinese, organizing a lot of back channel dialogue. So that's a concern. But what do you think about some of these? The question of, does that also mean that? What do you think of Bibi? I know that for like 8 days now, people have been speaking about the AI videos, the silence on Bibi's part. Is he in a bunker somewhere, or do you think that he's also been taken out, or what's your hypothesis?
I don't know. It's a strange thing. I mean, as I covered on my show yesterday, Mike Huckabee like put out a video of him and Bibi like speaking, and you know, Netanyahu's put out a few videos now where he's like, where the person interviewing him or talking to him, filming it, is like, how many fingers do you have? And he's like, oh, I have 5. Because, you know, one of the videos, the first video I think that came out, he had like 6 fingers.
Yeah.
Another video, he like didn't have his ring on. So like Mike Huckabee was like joking around, being like, Mr. President Trump sent me here to make sure you're alive and well. Like, how many fingers do you have? All of it's very goofy. Like everything happening right now as it relates to this entire conflict just feels extremely goofy. It all feels very like theatrical in the most like bizarre cartoonish sense, right?
Yeah.
Like every element I think of this conflict feels like a cartoon. Like it feels like you're watching something that is almost surreal. From the messaging that President Trump's putting out to some of the messaging that's coming from other world leaders, to like that whole situation with Netanyahu, because it wasn't just the like I said yesterday, I think Netanyahu is probably still alive, and I wouldn't even surprise me if Mossad was responsible for putting some of these videos out there to discredit.
I suspect so too. Yeah, it smells like that.
Yeah. So people clamp on it and they run with it, and then they find themselves in like a take bunker, as Burning Bright calls it, where they're like defending this thing because they don't want to look like an idiot, like they fell for clickbait, right? So I think that might be a discrediting operation by Mossad. But there were other elements of it, that it wasn't just like the AI videos or the fact that he skipped. He wasn't present for his first security cabinet meeting ever. Like he's never missed a security cabinet meeting, these things are televised in Israel. He wasn't running it. It was Israel Katz running it, the defense minister. His son, Yair Netanyahu, who is a social media influencer, who posts like 50 times a day, stopped posting like a week ago. So there were all these little indicators that people were running with, where they were like, oh, this must mean something devastating has happened, right? But I could also make the argument that all of those things were orchestrated by Mossad, where Mossad was like, hey, Yair, stop posting. Hey, Bibi, don't attend the meeting. And then they like use their sock accounts online to like push this out. And then people clamp down on it, run with it. That's kind of my take on it. Is there's nothing that's happening right now that I'm taking to heart because all of it is so bizarre in the way it's happening, including the news about Ali Larijani. Quite frankly, I mean, it's very, very goofy that again, like he was just walking around a parade. Like I understand that the premise of it, that it was like they were showing off this missile. There was like for Soleimani, all that stuff. But given that you're like in the middle of a war where purportedly their missiles incoming and everything's getting taken out, and like satellites are watching everything and can tell everything that's happening, it just feels like a really goofy situation. Especially when you consider that this is the guy who implemented evolution or form of it, continuity of government back in August. He's the one who came out and publicly said, "Yeah, we're implementing a continuity of government protocol and all that stuff." We've been through that before. So again, like if you're taking that level of precaution because you're acknowledging that there's a good chance that you're going to get a decapitation strike, they then purportedly do the decapitation strike, take out the Ayatollah, take out a bunch of IRGC guys. And like at that point, you're then deciding to like walk down the street on I mean, unless he had a suicide wish, like he wanted to be martyred.
Well, that's my only concern, right? The only way I can rationalize that is if there was some sort of a weird, because there is a big high these particular Shia like 12er groups. There's an idea of martyrdom as the highest act of human accomplishment. That being said, in the middle of war, when you know your value as somebody with very specific experience, wisdom, I mean, Ali Larijani has incredible, unique experiences and has built up diplomatic channels abroad. You wouldn't necessarily take yourself or allow yourself to be taken out, I wouldn't think, when it's not so easy to replace just anybody. It's not like somebody who is just an artilleryman, not downplaying the value of the life of the artilleryman, but that person gets taken down, they could be replaced pretty easily with somebody who does a similar job. But somebody of the scope of higher level experience and warfare as Larijani, it would be weird that he would choose to do that in the middle of the war. It's weird. So what you're saying is definitely to be taken seriously, that there is a degree of psyop just everywhere. There's a battle over perceptions in a big way. Does this also play into what you see with Tulsi Gabbard's strange? Oh, here we go. Let's say a little bit more about that.
I don't know if you saw this though, but like on Monday, this was either on Monday or Sunday, he like gave a press conference where he came out and he basically told all the Muslim countries, he was like, choose a side. Like, are you going to help us fight the great Satan or not? So again, like this is probably the most provocative thing I've seen him do, right? Like where it's just the calculation here is just very foolish. Like unless of course your intent was to be killed, or your intent was to make it look like you were killed and he's actually still alive and he's just faking his death. Like the deception there, I think there's merit to just that line of thought. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happened. But again, like for a guy who's like the Secretary of National like Security, very poor decision making. And again, that seems to be a consistent theme throughout like the narratives that we're being told. Because like we'll pivot to domestic stuff, like the domestic side of this, the American side of this. But I was just watching, there's a Senate hearing happening, intelligence hearing happening right now, where Tulsi Gabbard and Dan Ratcliffe and Kash Patel are all being, interrogated by senators over the Iran war and other things. And even Mark Warner pointed this out. There's a clip of him that I want to play, by the way. That's pretty fantastic. Where he pointed out, I pointed this out on my show yesterday, where he was asking Tulsi Gabbard, he was like, President Trump literally said he was shocked to see that the Iranians would close down the Strait of Hormuz, like that they did that. Like he's like, I never saw that coming. Meanwhile, he during a press conference on Monday said that he literally wrote a book in the 90s where he said that this was going to happen. Like he said that Osama bin Laden was going to blow up the World Trade Center, and that if we ever went to war with Iran, they would definitely close down the Strait of Hormuz. And I think the exact quote was that he would say you would see $300 per barrel of oil. That would be the price spike.
And who was it who said this? Who wrote
President
this book?
Trump? Donald Trump wrote, and so again, like he's been doing this a lot since he does this a lot in general, but he does this. He's been doing this with the Iran war, where he will contradict himself, and CNN has been like pulling it up and being like, "Here's what he said in the 3rd minute of his press conference. Here's what he said in the 37th minute of his press conference," and two statements that are in direct contradiction of one another. Where he literally said, he goes, "Of course I predicted that this was going to happen. I literally wrote a book about it 30 years ago and said this was going to happen. Of course I knew they were going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz." Like, yeah. And so there's been all these little goofy and Mark Warner like asked Tulsi Gabbard, he said, Trump said he had no idea this was going to happen. What the hell? Did he not have the right intelligence? Well, no, common sense. Like Tulsi Gabbard's response was, I think everybody understood that this was going to be Iran's response. That's like common sense. It's common knowledge. Of course, President Trump knew that. But again, like there's just this really, really goofy narrative development that I've seen happen. And one thing that Burning Bright pointed out that early on, which is a theme, by the way, it was a theme with the Venezuela thing, because nobody has really like their arms around what's actually happening here and what this thing is and what it's about and why we're doing this. Everyone has their own theories, including all the pundits, including all of like the officials, like the politicians, whatever. But especially in the very early, like the first days of the Iranian war, the only two entities that were in agreement on narrative were Trump and Iran. Like Trump would say something, there'd be all these other like American pundits, American officials saying something, right? Israel was saying something different. Everyone had their own version of what was happening, but the only people who would like agree with Trump were Iran. Like Trump said, "Oh, we killed the Ayatollah," and everyone was like, "Yeah, that's bullshit. You didn't kill the Ayatollah." And then Iran came out and said, "Yeah, they actually did kill the Ayatollah. He's dead." And that happened with Venezuela, by the way. Like Trump would say something, and then everyone would say that's bullshit. There's no way that's the truth. And then Venezuela would say, "Yeah, that actually did happen." So again, there's these weird patterns.
But what about the I mean, that did happen. It's true in some cases, but also there are things like the peace negotiations with Irakchi and Witkoff and company in Oman for the days leading up to the bombing starting in Iran. It seemed like there were very different views, where the Iranians were maintaining the idea that they were making great success and headway on the peace negotiations, recuperating a nuclear deal, that they were agreeing to all the different demands made by the United States. But then at the same time, the U.S. and Trump were putting out messaging at that same time saying that they were lying, that they were pushing for an imminent strike. So, and then they bombed them during the peace negotiations. So it doesn't seem like they were always in alignment with their narratives. It seems like there's often these big.
Yeah. And did you see what that British security advisor said?
No.
Jonathan Powell. Let me pull this up. Jonathan Powell.
Hmm.
So this guy came out yesterday. There's a story in The Guardian. And so UK security advisor attended US-Iran talks and judged deal was within reach. And so the TLDR, we won't read through this whole article, but what this guy says, this is like a British diplomat or a British, what is he? He's the national security advisor. Attended the final talks between the U.S. and Iran and judged that the offer made by Tehran on its nuclear program was significant enough to prevent a rush to war, The Guardian can reveal. Powell thought process had been made in Geneva in late February and that the deal proposed by Iran was surprising, according to sources. 2 days after the talks ended and after a date had been agreed for a further round of technical talks in Vienna, the U.S. and Israel launched the attack on Iran. Powell's presence at the talks and his close knowledge of how they were progressing was confirmed by 3 sources. And so what he goes on to say is he says, it was strange because Wickoff and Kushner showed up, but they had no technical expertise. Like they did none of the the team that you would expect them to show up with, who would have all the technical knowledge and expertise on Iran, weren't there with them. And so he brought his own team, and they were like providing all the technical expertise that they needed as they were sitting there speaking. And he's like, that was weird. Like, why didn't they bring those guys? And then, like he says, he's like, we walked out of that meeting being like, man, that was mind blowing. The Iranians gave us so much more. They didn't give us specifics, but he says they gave us so much more than I was expecting. He said, it says right here, quote, the UK team were surprised by what the Iranians put on the table. The former official said, quote, it was not a complete deal, but it was progress. But it was progress, and it was unlikely to be the Iranians' final offer. The British team expected the next round of negotiations to go ahead on the basis of the progress in Geneva. And this is consistent with, I think, the narratives that we saw coming out of that meeting, because Trump walked out, or like when they ended it, Trump, I think, was doing a press conference or something. And he said, yeah, I'm really unhappy with how that went. Like, that was like, I'm really disappointed in the Iranians, thought they were going to be better about this. The Iranians came out and said, it was a great meeting. Like, we actually think we actually might be able to do this. This seems like we're on the cusp of like,
yeah, you and I were literally talking about that while
Yeah.
it was happening, and saying that this implies that there will be, it's not likely that we're going to see a bombing of Iran, because it was just looking so good from the Iranian side. Their messaging was so positive that
Yep.
we couldn't even conceive that this was going to happen just a couple of days later.
Yeah, So Pezeshkian and Arakchi were out there saying, yeah, like, this is actually looking really good. That this is going better than expected. I think we're going to be able to get this thing done. We've made a proposal that like we can agree to in principle. So again, like, very strange. And I'm not drawing like definitive conclusions here, but I'm just noticing things. It's like I'm just pulling out data points and saying, all right, here are patterns that I'm noticing. This is very strange, because like you're saying, this is one of two things. It's like either this is deception one way or the other. This is either it's deception in the sense that that we're being deceived, like the public, everyone's being deceived by whatever Trump and the Iranians are saying, and this British guy, or the Iranians were being deceived, and this was like they were baited into something where we then struck them, right? But the narrative, again, like the narrative on this was that the official narrative was that because of these talks, this proposal, this is where it gets weird, Matt, because we have these weird conflicts of reporting. This is telling us, the British guy is telling us that Iran made a proposal to the US, and the US had to go back and basically like analyze it. Like, okay, and then maybe we'll have a different kind of proposal at the next meeting. The official narrative from like the after the bombings began was that the U.S. had made a proposal to Iran, and because we made that proposal to Iran, that's what brought the Ayatollah and those 40 IRGC leaders into a room together to discuss the proposal and consider it and negotiate and like debate it. And that was the opportunity to kill them all, was because they were all in the same room. It was the same narrative we got out of Qatar back in September, where the Hamas guys were given a proposal. They all got in the same room to meet. The Israelis knew they were meeting, and then they fired the missile at them. And like, but then all of the whole negotiation team went outside to like smoke a cigarette or whatever, and then like their family members all got killed, right? Yep. So the same story, but a different outcome. And so that's where the narrative and the international community has expressed outrage, saying, well, this is like deception at a level like unprecedented. How could anybody possibly negotiate with the Americans ever again, knowing that this is how they negotiate? They tell you they're we're negotiating in good faith, and they kill you. Like, that's not good. That's not art of the deal. That's not good negotiation. So again, fog of war. We don't know who is telling the truth and who is lying. It's possible that, in a really strange reality, that the Iranians and Wickoff, like the Americans and the Iranians, were already on the same page and actually had already hammered out a deal, and they were just doing performative theater in front of the Brits. So the Brits would walk out of there with this narrative. Like, that's a possibility, it's possible, like as Chris Paul posits, as he often does, that none of this is even happening. And this is all just completely made up. This is all just narrative. I don't quite go that far, but I am willing to entertain that everything we're being told isn't actually happening, that maybe only some of it's happening, that maybe only portions of it are happening. So it's very strange. But where I would take us next is this meeting today, because big meeting happening right now.
I'll tell you what, before you do that, let's do an ad read, and then we can listen to the next phase here. So 1 second, let's pull up. What do we got here? It's Unicity. Here we are, Unicity.
But this is all I've been drinking since last Friday. Don't drink coffee anymore, and I feel more focused since I've been taking it. It's been amazing, and so I would encourage you guys to try it out. This might be my new favorite thing.
That's changing lives. More energy, no cravings, clear thinking, and no stubborn belly fat. Imagine waking up ready to crush the day and shed a few stubborn pounds without crazy dieting. If you want to feel great and support the show, head to badlandshealth.com and lock in $70 off today and all future orders, plus a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's badlandshealth.com. Your future will thank you, or your future self, sorry, will thank you. That was poorly read. I'll do better. Okay, the next one here is, oops. Hold on, let me just get this thing leveled up. I think it's a Badlands shop of some sort. Yes, it's a Badlands shop, which we will now play. Never mind, I don't actually have it, so we won't play it. Okay, go ahead. What's your next phase?
So the next thing that I would take us to is this Senate intelligence hearing that's happening right now, right? Where again, I've only caught portions of it. I haven't been able to watch it fully from start to finish, and it's still happening right now. So there'll be more. Is that
the one where Tulsi's come out saying like our intelligence has informed us that China and Russia and Iran and North Korea have new missile systems that make them a mortal threat, and we have to? Is that the one? Because somebody just sent me this clip like an hour ago. Here, I'll just play it. I'll
play it. Because
however, the intelligence.
Sorry, it's not playing.
However, the intelligence community assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced, or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range.
Yeah, is that from today's ongoing?
That appears to be. I mean, that she's dressed like that. So yes, that
I was shocked. Somebody sent that to me. I was like, "Well, is that a deep fake or something?" And I'm like, "No, that actually." I googled it, and that's actually what seems to be happening. But I wasn't sure if that was today or some other day that happened. So
no, today. But I mean, I wish that it was a little longer, so we had a little more context as to what they're discussing. But yeah, I mean, again, like. Very, very strange developments because Tulsi is not a war hawk. She's not somebody who's pro-war. She's always been known as being anti-war. She's been vocally anti-war with Iran going back to Trump's first term. You may remember that in the days after Soleimani was killed, she was the one standing up being like, "This is wrong. Like, we should not have done this." While a number of people were all like, "It's time to double down and go after and go after Iran's."
Like that's the Tulsi I remembered, and I mean, I even had a video clip pulled up here of her literally saying this very thing. That here, I'll just play it from 2019.
Here are the steps that Donald Trump has taken to create a war with Iran. First, he tore up the Iran nuclear agreement.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
Second, he has escalated crippling sanctions against Iran.
The sanctions kicking in at midnight Sunday target Iran's oil exports, banking, and shipping, even though UN inspectors say Iran is still complying with the nuclear deal.
The United States will pursue additional sanctions, tougher than ever before.
Third, he designated Iran's military as a terrorist organization.
Secretary of State State Mike Pompeo has announced that the U.S. is designating the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terror group.
Today, the United States is continuing to build its maximum pressure campaign against the Iranian regime. I am announcing our intent to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including its Quds Force, as a foreign terrorist organization.
With this terror designation, the U.S. can sanction pretty much anybody who talks to or deals with or has any business whatsoever with the IRGC.
And fourth, he continues to deploy more and more U.S. troops to the region.
Just moments ago, the Pentagon authorized an additional 1,000 American troops to the Middle East in response to growing concerns over Iran.
The Trump administration announced yesterday that a U.S. aircraft carrier and a bomber task force are being sent to areas closer to Iran.
Yes, there. I mean, her video goes on for like another minute or so, but that was like a very strong position anti-war, warning about these things pretty cogently back in 5 years ago. And then now to see her saying things like this and even attacking what's his name, Joe Kent, when he resigned in protest. And she basically said, no, look, our commander in chief knows what to do. You were wrong, Joe Kent. It seems like weird. I don't know. Like you said, it's either like some sort of a fake kabuki theater or some sort of a weird, Marion Adelson, Shloomuli parasite, got lodged into her spine. I don't really know.
Yeah. So there's a few, let's go back in time a little bit and look at this, because I think that there's a few, I do want to get to Joe Kent. I think Joe Kent is significant, and let's save some time for that. But let's go back in time a little bit and look at, because that video you said was from 2019. So that was before we took out Soleimani, which was January 3rd, 2020, right?
Yep.
So if we go back to this date, let's see, the timelines are, if you don't mind looking up real quick, can you look up when we actually pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal? And I'll pull
that was May 12th, I think, 2018.
Okay, perfect. So then we pull out May 12th. Here's May 15th, 3 days later, 2018. Treasury targets Iran's central bank governor and an Iraqi bank moving millions of dollars for IRGC Quds forces, right? And I think they actually name Arakchi in here, if I'm not mistaken. No, they don't. So they're targeting, is it Saif then? Yeah, it's Saif. Okay, so it says OFAC is designating Valioa, I can't even say his name, but Saif is his last name, Iran's central bank governor, for assisting, sponsoring, or providing financial material or technological support for, or financial or other services to or in support of the IRGC-QF. Saif has conspired with the IRGC-QF to move millions of dollars through the international financial system in a variety of foreign currencies to allow the IRGC-QF to fund its activities abroad. Saif has also supported the transfer of IRGC-QF associated funds to the Al-Balad Islamic Bank, an Iraq-based bank, which is also being designated today. Okay, so they're targeting, the main story here is that they're targeting the central bank governor. Remember, we've mentioned before, their central bank is not within the Rothschilds banking network, right? Doesn't mean it's free of corruption, but that's just a notable designation. Fast forward 3 months from here, and you get this. Iran's Forex chief arrested. Intense build-up to sanctions return. Ahmad Arakchi detained a day after he was fired. Government faces criticism of its efforts to save economy in the face of approaching U.S. sanctions. The Iranian, this is from August 5th, 2018, says the Iranian central bank's top foreign exchange official has been arrested, the judiciary said Sunday, a day after he was sacked, and as tensions rise ahead of reimposed U.S. sanctions, because remember, Trump said we're going to impose these sanctions, but they were on a delay. It was I think it was October they ended up imposing them, right? Ahmad Arakchi, who was a vice governor at the bank in charge of Forex, was arrested along with several other unnamed individuals, including a government clerk and 4 currency brokers, said judiciary spokesman Ghulam Hussein Mohseni Ejieh. These names are impossible for me. In a statement, according to state broadcaster IRIB. And so the big takeaway from here is not only was this guy fired, right, and then arrested the next day, but he is the nephew of the now foreign minister, Abbas Arakchi. Back then, he was the deputy foreign minister. So the deputy foreign minister's nephew, who is the vice president of their central bank, gets arrested, right? And then his uncle gets elevated from deputy foreign minister to foreign minister a few years later. Then
that was when the actual foreign minister died in the assassination on Raisi, right? In the helicopter incident?
Correct. Yes, the foreign minister dies in the helicopter crash with Raisi, and then Pezeshkian, who's a heart surgeon, he gets elevated, he gets elected president, and Arakchi is elevated from deputy foreign minister to foreign minister. Here's October 16th, 2021. Iran's former central bank governor sentenced to 10 years. So Iran then goes in. It says this Saif was the head of the central bank of Iran from 2013 to 2018 during the first 6 years of Hassan Rouhani's presidency, but was accused of improper foreign currency transactions together with one of his deputies, Ahmad Arakchi, nephew of Iran's former chief nuclear negotiator, Abbas Arakchi. The spokesman of the notorious judiciary, which combines both prosecutorial and court functions, said that Ahmad Arakchi was sentenced to 8 years. The charges were improperly selling $160 million US and 20 million euros on the open market. And when did this guy get arrested? I don't know if it says when he was arrested, but he was arrested sometime between August 2018 when Arakchi was arrested, and is October 2021 when he gets sentenced to 10 years in prison. And again, the key thing here, Matt, is this right here. The charges were improperly selling $160 million US and 20 million euros on the open market. So where did they get $160 million US cash and 20 million euros cash? Do you remember a scandal that would explain how they would have gotten all this cash in their possession?
Go on. No, what would that be?
That would be the Iran nuclear deal. Do you remember when Barack Obama flew pallets of cash in the middle of the night on planes to Iran, and they included tens of millions of dollars in euros and hundreds of millions of dollars? I think it was $400 million in US dollars, and I think it was $40 million worth of euros flown in the cover of darkness, like secretly to Iran. These are and as Trump has explained recently in the past few months, it required the Treasury to empty out the cash from every bank in Northern Virginia and Western Maryland around DC in order to get all the cash they needed to send on those pallets. That's where my theory, that's where I think this money came from. So these guys were basically getting a payoff, I think, from Obama. They were laundering this money and then selling it illegally on the market. And then their own government comes after them for doing it, arrests them, and prosecutes them and throws them in prison for 10 years. And again, this is months after Trump imposes his own sanctions on them, identifies them as criminals, and says these guys are doing something illegal on the market. Right after that happens, 3 days after he backs out of the Iran nuclear deal. So I think it's fair to say that all of this stuff is connected, that these guys were criminals. They were working with President Obama. I've seen the analysis, and I think it's very compelling, that the Iran nuclear deal had nothing to do with a nuclear program. It had everything to do with a money laundering program through their central bank. And it would appear that this is what that scandal is right here, is them doing this with this cash that they had on hand. Because again, I think one of the things that I understand about Iran is that they would only do business in the rial. Like they were very strict about not using foreign currency, especially US dollars and euros, right? So the fact that these guys had this cash would suggest that there's only so many places you're going to get that kind of cash on hand, and I think it probably came from Obama.
Yeah.
So then we jump forward to December of this past December. Head of Iran's central bank resigns amid protests as rial hits record low against the dollar. This is when this is December 29, 2025. This is when Scott Bessent, remember, has come out since and said, yeah, we did that. That was manipulation. We did that on purpose. We did that as part of our operation against Iran. It's what antagonized and catalyzed the protests. They got people out in the streets. It got people angry because of the hyperinflation that happened as a result. And it caused their central bank governor to resign and then be replaced by a new guy. Now, they protected themselves by doing the devolution in August. When Arakchi came out and said, or not Arakchi, when Larijani came out and said, the guy who was just purportedly killed in August, when he said, the reason we're doing this, we're creating this thing called the Defense Council. This was a provision we put in our Constitution after the Iraq War in the 1980s. It allows us to devolve the powers of our political system as well as our military in case, in fear of a decapitation event where the Ayatollah would be taken out and maybe the leaders of the IRGC. And the two big things that came away were that, number one, all like the 31 governors, there's a governor of every province, the 31 provinces in Iran, they were all given the powers of the Ayatollah, the political powers of the Ayatollah, to negotiate trade deals, bilateral trade deals with foreign countries, and use foreign currencies, which was prohibited, as I understand it, by the Ayatollah otherwise, but also to engage in a barter system where they were exchanging goods and services, because out of fear that the rial would be hyperinflated, which of course it was a few months later. The other big thing that happened was that it removed the Ayatollah from the chain of command, and it totally tore down the hierarchy and infrastructure of the IRGC, their security and their intelligence hierarchies. Because as Larijani said, the concern was that they had been infiltrated by Mossad, and so which is what Mike Pompeo and all these like Israeli officials were bragging in January. Yeah, we did infiltrate the IRGC. We were inside and we were ready to take the whole country down from the inside. Right. Well, and so then they did the devolution, and not only did they tear down the structures, that they rebuilt them from scratch. They said, very similar, by the way, to what happened in Saudi Arabia in 2017 2015, when King Salman became the king and MBS became the defense minister. First thing he did was tore down the entire government on paper and rebuilt it from scratch into security and economy. Those are the two agencies they have now. So again, there are patterns here that I'm noticing. I don't have any like firm conclusions, but I'm just noticing patterns that are strange. Like Trump puts a sanction on these guys. They're then arrested a few months later by Rouhani. One of the guys is related to the deputy foreign minister, who years later becomes the real foreign minister after Raisi's helicopter goes down and he's killed. And then Raisi being a mullah, being like purportedly overt, ostensibly a religious zealot in the eyes of the war hawks in America and in the West. He's replaced by a heart surgeon as the president. And then we're led to believe that this somehow makes Iran more radical than they were before, that they have a heart surgeon running their country as opposed to a mullah, like one of the religious zealots. None of it makes any sense. Like the narrative just isn't adding up, in my opinion. And then we get to yesterday. That brings us full circle to yesterday, because if you go look on X, you'll see that in the days after Soleimani was killed, people are posting what Joe Kent was putting online, and he was saying, now's the time to strike, take out Iran, take out Iran, take out Iran, like take out their missile system, like their missile production facilities, go after their oil, like now's the time, right? That's what he was putting online. Since then, he has run for office during the Biden administration. Steve Bannon, by the way, was the one who created him. Chris Paul and I were talking about that earlier, that Steve Bannon is the one who introduced Joe Kent to the world. Like he brought him on his show countless times, and I think it was 2022. And gave him a platform and let him tell a story about how his wife was killed in Syria. She was an intelligence operative in Syria, Navy intelligence, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. But she was killed on deployment in Syria. And there's actually a video that I'm happy to play right now of Joe Kent explaining this. And he says in his words that his wife was killed as a result of the CIA trying to subvert earnest action to withdraw from Syria or withdraw from the territory. And then the CIA tried to subvert it and rug pull it. And because of their subversive action, that's why his wife died. It was the CIA's fault that his wife died.
That's interesting.
If you want to watch that video, I'm happy to play it. But
yeah, you can, I'd be curious to watch that at some point whenever you want to play it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, let's just go ahead and play this.
You're saying that you still don't suspect that he was an honest player in the game, or you're saying what exactly?
Oh no, I'm saying I think he had an axe to grind. I think this guy, like, and that's a theme, by the way, in all my analysis that I look for. I look for who has a chip on their shoulder and an axe to grind with the establishment. Now, again, I'm not drawing firm conclusions one way or the other, but I'm just looking at the data and presenting the data and letting the data kind of speak for itself. And again, I think I'm patient with all this. I'm willing, as Trump says, let's see what happens. I'm willing to see how this all plays out, because what's interesting to me, Matt, is that Joe Kent resigns yesterday. He puts out this letter, which we can read, which does a number of things. Not only does it blame Israel for the Iran war, he says Iran was never a threat and that we did this for Israel. That Israel basically controls our foreign policy and our Pentagon. He blames Israel for the Iraq war. He blames Israel for ISIS. I mean, he does a lot. Like, he goes pretty hard in the paint against Israel in this resignation letter, to the extent that, like, the entire uniparty, both the uniparty left and the uniparty right, are attacking him and calling him an anti-Semite and saying he's awful and this is a great thing that he's gone and now we should go after Tulsi Gabbard. But he does this the day before this major hearing. And I want to play some clips from the hearing, but let's play this video first. And, you know, as Chris Paul and I were discussing earlier, this is like free advertising for the hearing, because now all like the Trump official people, like all the Trump admin people, are saying, well, this was obviously some sort of a stunt that he was pulling the day before so that the whole hearing would become about his resignation letter. Well, the hearing actually isn't about his resignation letter. The hearing is actually about some other stuff that's pretty juicy, including election integrity. And we'll get to that. But basically what his letter does is it brings everybody's attention to the fact that this hearing is happening. And it kind of makes it like the main headline, where otherwise it might not even be known that this hearing was happening until, you know, some of the clips made it online. And now Joe Kent's going on with Tucker Carlson tonight to discuss his resignation. Who knows what that'll look like. But let's play this video and then we can talk about it.
Yep.
Who worked for about 20 years serving in the U.S. military as not only a Green Beret, eventually a CIA paramilitary officer as well. This all culminated when you were working in the Trump administration, and your wife, who was a naval officer, was actually killed while serving in Syria. You blamed her death on rogue elements within the Trump administration whom undermined the president's withdrawal strategy in Syria. Can you explain how you came to that conclusion?
I mean, I was in the military right when the war on terror started. I came in just before 2001. So I was a Green Beret for, I did 11 combat deployments. Then I went right into the CIA as a paramilitary operations officer when I hit the 20-year mark in the military. That was going to be my second career. My late wife, Shannon, was a Navy signals intelligence specialist. She spoke Arabic. So by the time I met her, she already had quite a few combat deployments. She was deployed for the last push to go take out the last bit of ground that ISIS controlled in 2018. And they reached their objective by late November, December of 2018. And that's when Trump sent out a famous tweet. But that tweet also had orders behind it that said, hey, let's get our troops out of Syria, because in Trump's mind, this is what the American people hired him to do. He ran on, hey, ISIS is out of control. We are going to go in there. We're going to crush and dismantle ISIS. And we very much did that. I was deployed under Obama in 2016 in the counter-ISIS mission, and we had no direction whatsoever. We had no authorities. We were over there very much in harm's way, taking casualties, but we didn't have the leadership at the executive level to make hard decisions and give us the authorities to take out ISIS. Trump came in 2017, and within less than probably about 18 months, we had defeated the Islamic Caliphate, lock, stock, and barrel. They didn't control any more ground. Now, there was a lot of people in permanent Washington, D.C., the administrative state, the national security blob, whatever you want to call it, that they really wanted to stay in Syria. They were mad that we had left Iraq in the first place. We reestablished a foothold back in northern Iraq, which is relatively peaceful, but we had a foothold in Syria. But that was all tied up with the counter-ISIS mission. But these people at the very senior levels of the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, the State Department, there was a lot of Obama holdouts and even some old George Bush people that just got swept into the Trump administration, like Secretary of Defense Mattis, that they wanted to stay there forever, but they also wanted to turn this into regime change 2.0 against Assad, which to me at that point in my career, I was like, have you guys seen, did you guys fight a different war than me? Because every time we do this regime change thing, like, it doesn't work out in our favor. So I was amazed that these people even had the audacity to talk like this. But the orders came down in December of 2018. They were supposed to be out of there. My late wife and everybody else that was in Syria at the time, they were supposed to get on airplanes and fly to Erbil by Christmas Eve of 2018. Now, I could see this all play out in real time. There was a lot of feet dragging going on. There was senior level officials for the administration who were giving the orders, and there was these mid-level appointees that were just like, well, we have to wait till we get more orders, just really tying it up in bureaucratic speak. Because if you've been in the government for any length of time, you understand how to drag your feet. It's not very complicated to do. And unfortunately, I don't think Trump had enough folks that were loyal to him and to his agenda to understand what was happening at the deeper levels of bureaucracy. So I saw this play out. I was talking with my wife, and I was like, I think that they're going to keep you guys there. And she's like, yeah, I kind of get that feeling too. But we do have orders to be out of here by Christmas Eve of 2018. And tragically, they remained. And about a month later, on the 16th of January, 2019, her and 3 other Americans were killed by a suicide bomber in Manbij, Syria. So I had a brief I decided I was going to resign from the government at that time. We have 2 kids, 5 and 7 now, but they were very young. So I just really wanted to focus on my children. But I had a chance to meet Trump at Dover. I basically told him what I just told you. I said, look, you don't know who I am, but I've been fighting these wars at the ground level since they started, really. And you're getting it right in a way that no other president has. Your instincts are right. Like when Trump as a candidate said that, like, we got lied to about Iraq and we never should have gone in the first place and we should get out. Like that he was 100% right, his gut instinct. So I shared that with him, but then I just told him, I was like, you're getting undermined in a way that I've never seen before at the mid to senior levels. And I came in under Clinton, I served all through Bush, I served all through Obama. And what I saw on day one of the Trump administration, the way that we had mid-level bureaucrats who just basically said that we don't have to listen to the Trump administration. Like, and that's ultimately what led to my wife getting killed.
Yeah, that's very potent and very moving. How do you square that with what he's done now as far as his decision to resign over his death?
I mean, look, I have a really specific view of the whole conflict, of the entire big picture, right? And it doesn't mean that I fully understand every single element of it, but I have a broad picture in my mind of what this whole thing looks like, from just years of observing it and analyzing it. And again, just from a totally open source standpoint, no intelligence training, no security clearance, no friends feeding me information, so who, what do I know? Right. Take it for what it's worth. But what he explains right there aligns with exactly what I was thinking in 2019, because I specifically remember I've been tracking this stuff every single day for the past 11 years, watching Trump every single day since the moment he announced he came down the escalator, analyzing his behavior, observing, internalizing, watching, just watching it. And I specifically remember Trump announcing the withdrawal from Syria. And I specifically remember the excuses for why we weren't leaving. And we didn't end up leaving. And we're still there right now, by the way. We still have not left Syria. So when Joe Kent says that there were subversive elements inside the Trump administration that were blocking his orders and blocking his agenda, that aligns perfectly with every other thing that we saw happen in the first Trump administration, paragraph. We watched so many people inside the Trump administration, some people who were thought of as good white hats, right, do terrible things, I think, to undermine Trump and stab him in the back. And there was a revolving door, obviously, of people who were coming and going the whole time, right? And this again, I just saw that clip for the first time ever yesterday. I didn't know that clip was out there, and I didn't know that was the exact story. But that affirms a lot of the speculation that I had about what happened with Syria in 2018 and why we didn't leave. Is that the CIA didn't want us to leave, and so they subverted our efforts to leave. And so again, if we're just looking at this from an objective perspective, I see people in the chat who are saying this, that, and the other. Let's just remove all of our bias and all of our emotions from it and just look at this objectively of what we just watched. This is a man who's the mother of his children were just killed by in his mind, the deep state, right? In violation of orders that President Trump gave to leave Syria. And because they didn't want them to leave Syria, his wife had to stay, and then she was killed by them, because he says in his letter that ISIS is Israel, right? So again, he then resigns from the military, he resigns from the government, and then he goes to focus on taking care of his 2 very young children. Do you think the guy has an axe to grind? Do you think the guy maybe has a little bit of a revenge arc in him, that he's seeking vengeance like against the people that he thinks killed his wife. Like he would, if you went to him, would he not be a guy that you would go and target and say, hey buddy, you want to like, do you want justice? Like, let's not call it vengeance. Let's call it justice. Do you want justice for what happened to your wife against the people who killed her? That would be a guy that I would literally be going to and being like, hey, we want you on the team. Like, we want you to help us take these people down. Because I look at the current Trump administration and I think exactly what he's describing is still there. I think there are still subversive elements in the Trump administration. I think Trump has let them in. I think he knows, maybe even knows who they are. Mike Huckabee would be one of them. But I mean, look at what happened with what's his name? John Bolton, right? John Bolton, according to Colonel McGregor, John Bolton was somebody that Donald Trump was disparaging when he like on the campaign trail in 2016 and when he first got into office. And it wasn't until Sheldon Adelson came to him, his top donor, and said, "I want this guy on your team." And then Trump turned to him and said, "Yeah, bring him in." And then Trump let him in. And then apparently, you know, the story he told in the years later was that he brought him on to be like the scary, like attack dog that he would bring into his meetings with these other countries and be like, hey, if you don't negotiate with me, I'm going to unleash Bolton on you. And everyone knows Bolton's a psychopath and a warmonger. So they would then negotiate with Trump. That was a story he would tell. But the story that McGregor told was that Sheldon Adelson actually forced this guy in. And the moment Sheldon Adelson said it, Trump, his whole tune changed and said, okay, bring him in, let him on. Now, fast forward to this year or whatever, like into last year, Bolton gets arrested for stealing classified intelligence from the Trump administration and keeping it. So Trump basically let this guy come in. He let him steal classified intelligence. And now that he's come back into office for his second term, he goes and arrests the guy for being a subversive traitor effectively. I mean, that's how I would describe John Bolton, is that he's a traitor. So yeah, sure. Again, that is a definitive proof. Like that is definitive evidence that there is an operation being run against bad elements inside the Trump administration from going back to the first term. And when you hear Joe Kent tell that story, I think that gives him motive for why he would help President Trump go after these people, go after the deep state. And then you fast forward to yesterday and the resignation.
Oh, just quick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Just to say one thing about that, though, still, I mean, is that, and I do want to hear, we still haven't spoken about the actual intelligence inquiry in Congress. But, you know, like Trump still fired Bolton because, as Trump had said, if Bolton had his way, we would have already been pulled into a bombing of Iran in World War III already back in 2019. So he did that based on the idea that if Bolton had his way, it's true, like he was a fanatic who really did want a war with Iran. Now, admittedly, today, Bolton is saying, yeah, I wanted a war, but not this kind of, I don't like this kind of way of doing it. So that's a discontinuity. But we still did go ahead. And there are objective things. So I agree that there is a lot of kabuki theater, and you can't always believe the messaging putting out by the scriptwriters, or even what you're being shown on AI-generated deepfakes on TV and stuff, you know? Or scrolls. But that being said, there are certain things, like we do know supply chains and like vital energy systems that support the 8 billion lives on the earth are being targeted right now, with fertilizer prices set to skyrocket. That means a destruction of food production. American farmers are already living in the red. Their cost of production of just maintaining a lot of the goods that they used to import for maintaining their tractors, their other like farming equipment, that's all of those prices are increasing. So the debt rates are increasing heavily for especially the small and medium farms. Now the fertilizer prices are going to increase because a lot of the energy, the energy prices are obviously going to be only going higher and higher. The biggest oil fields in the world, I think it's the Fars oil fields, have just been lit up in Iran. You have, the biggest natural gas depots or whatever it is, refinement station. I think it's reserves in Qatar that were also blown up, early on in the war. So you got all these things that are objectively measurable to mass death of humans on Earth as a consequence of this, which looks like it will probably get worse so far.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So yesterday, I played on my show. I don't know if you're familiar with Kevin Hassett. Kevin Hassett is he is the American economist serving as the director of the National Economic Council under President Trump. So he did an interview, I think it was on Monday, where on CNBC or CNN or one of those stations, and they were asking about everything you just laid out, specifically the fertilizer. Do you know how he said they're solving the fertilizer crisis? Venezuela is now going to provide all the fertilizer that we need.
Oh, yeah.
So now the Maduro regime is now going to provide. They're going to step in and they're going to provide the oil for the world that Iran can no longer provide, and they're going to provide the fertilizer for the United States that is being threatened because of this, like you said, the supply chain being threatened. So the Maduro regime is now going to get rich off of this situation. Russia is getting rich off of this situation because Trump has now lifted sanctions against them. He's lifted sanctions against India or against Russia, so Russia can sell India oil at full price as opposed to selling them oil at half price, which is what they were doing before. He then listed other sanctions for other. Oh, Trump! Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. But he said that Venezuela is going to compensate for the loss of fertilizer and also oil. That's insane. That's not right at all. Like that can't happen. They have the worst quality oil in the world. It's really, really sour crude, and the U.S. doesn't have the means of processing that because they're already at 95% of production capacity for processing that kind of low quality crude. And China does, but China, so there's very few countries that can even use and refine it. And even the oil executives didn't even said that they don't have. It'll take 10 years to build up the capacity where that type of low grade crude can become useful based on where we're at right now. So it won't happen. I don't know why he would say that.
My understanding actually is that the oil in Venezuela is the richest oil in the world, that you get 3 times as much, 3 times as much when you refine it, but it's the hardest to refine. And so you have to have the best engineers and the best scientists, which the rest of the world doesn't have. Really, only America has the technology and the know-how to refine it, which puts us in a unique position.
But the U.S. is at 95% capacity for producing that kind of oil already. Like there's not much more they could do. So to be able to take the amount of deposits that Venezuela has is going to take. I've seen the most conservative estimates are about 10 years to start building up some sort of a capacity.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, again, like those are the narratives, but I'm just saying that. If you look at this from a big picture standpoint, I mean, look at what we're talking about here. Here's the proof of what I just said. Here's from Reuters yesterday. The White House says U.S. seeking fertilizer from Venezuela and Morocco. So the Maduro regime is going to get rich off of what's happening right now. Now, again, what actually is happening, we can debate that all day. We can debate what is actually happening and the morality of it. I think it's I remain anti-war with Iran. Like I was disappointed when it was first announced. I'm still disappointed that the war is happening. I want to understand, but instead of getting angry about it happening, I'm trying to understand why it's happening, why we're being told things, and why the narratives that we're being told are not aligning with one another. Like, why are there so many contradictions? Why is Trump contradicting himself in his own press conferences, like within minutes of each other? And then why are things like the Maduro regime and Putin getting super rich? These are supposed to be our enemies, as I've been told for the past 10 years. They're now getting rich off of this situation. Now they're becoming very, very important trade partners because we're going to get our fertilizer and our oil from Venezuela. Putin is now getting the sanctions that the West imposed on him years ago lifted. So he can sell oil to India for full price, which is, I can pull those articles that is happening. So why is that happening? Like, why are those the net effects of this situation? Again, I don't have a firm explanation, but I just find the contradictions based on what we're told. When Trump tells us that Maduro is the most evil man ever, and his government's extremely evil, but then he comes out last week and says they're actually our closest ally now, and Delcy Rodriguez is one of our best partners. That doesn't make any sense. Like that doesn't logically.
Well, that's the question I have too, right? Like there's a lot of to speak about China and to frame it and to convince so many Americans that China is your mortal threat and enemy, to justify, what will be, as some say, including ban an inevitable war within the next few years, then to say to China, hey, please buy our oil and buy Venezuelan oil too, which he just did last week. is a bit of a weird thing, or to say to Russia, to go along with the hype that Russia is this threat and sponsor all of these weapons into Ukrainian hands, and then at the same time to temporarily, and it is temporary, the lifting of the sanctions on Russian oil to keep the prices kind of from skyrocketing. But I don't know if that's going to be an extended ending of those sanctions, or just something that's going to be on for a couple of weeks or a month or two. I don't know. If it's temporary, it doesn't mean too much to me, right? But so is it brilliance? Is this like a brilliant strategic game? Is it incompetence, or is it an acceleration towards chaos to try to overturn the game board and try to organize the chaos out of the fire? I don't know. One of those three. It's either brilliant stupidity or planned evil brilliance. And I'm not convinced which one it is at this point. However, I'm just looking at my wife just messaged me saying I have to drive her to an appointment. So how about we shift gears to the last position, because we've never spoken about the intelligence inquiry that's happening right now. So how about we do that for the next 5 or 6 minutes?
Yep.
And then I'll read a last ad, and then we'll transition out.
Okay, so I want you to listen to this exchange between Mark Warner, the senator from Virginia, my senator, who's like a huge scumbag, really bad guy. What I've noticed, the pattern that I've noticed, is that the Democrats specifically have been tricked into telling the truth, especially since the Iran war started. They've been coming out and telling the truth about the military industrial complex, forever wars, our relationship with Israel, how Israel does control our government. They've been coming out and saying that. And the reason I think they're jumping on this, it's not all of them, because a lot of them are, I think, Zionists and controlled by Israel. But I think they see it as a wedge issue. They see that Trump's base is breaking from him over this issue. And so they're like, oh, shit, here's our chance to isolate Trump from the American people. We have to jump on this and expose the fact that Trump is a warmongering psychopath, and he's controlled by Israel, and him and Netanyahu have a bad relationship, and whatever. Like Netanyahu controls him, all that stuff. He's a puppet, whatever. So they've been forced to tell the truth. Listen to what Mark Warner says in this exchange with Tulsi Gabbard.
Towards foreign intelligence collection and covert action. This year, I look forward to going further, namely by growing our cadre of collectors.
But that is also why hearings like this one matter so much. Over the past year, we have seen a series of developments that raise serious concerns about the erosion of safeguards that protect both our democracy and our security. And nowhere is that more worrying than when it comes, to the integrity of our elections. For decades now, our intelligence community has warned that foreign adversaries, including Russia, China, and Iran, are actively seeking to shape the outcome of American elections. These efforts have included cyber intrusions, disinformation campaigns, and covert influence operations designed to divide Americans and undermine our confidence in our democratic institutions. Protecting our elections from these threats should be one of the intelligence community's highest priorities. The DNI is supposed to be coordinating intelligence on foreign election interference, warning the American people about adversaries seeking to undermine our democracy, ensuring that federal, state, and local officials have the information they need. Congress even required the creation of a foreign malign influence center inside the office of the DNI to coordinate the intelligence community's response to foreign election interference and ensure that these threats are properly shared across the government. That is the mission Congress assigned to the DNI. But while foreign adversaries are actively probing our democratic institutions, the DNI has eliminated the Foreign Malign Influence Center and does not have a designated official coordinating the response to election threats. And for months, the committee has repeatedly requested briefings from the IC, briefings that are required by law on legitimate foreign threats to the midterms. We have received no response. Now, that silence, I believe, should concern every member of the committee, because it clearly demonstrates the DNI is not interested in protecting American democracy by combating foreign influence. Instead, unfortunately, we have seen the DNI involve herself in purely domestic matters. Last month, we saw Director Gabbard personally participate in a law enforcement raid to seize election ballots and voting machine records in Fulton County, Georgia. A raid tied to an election that the president lost 6 years ago. When the warrant supporting the raid was unsealed, it showed something deeply troubling. There was no foreign connection to justify the involvement of our nation's top spy. Instead, the predicate for the warrant was a slop of debunked conspiracy theories that had already been rejected repeatedly by courts, by independent investigators, and even by Georgia's own Republican Secretary of State. Yet the nation's top intelligence official was personally involved in this operation. This raises one very serious question. If the intelligence community is not being deployed to mobilize against foreign threats, why is it being deployed at all on a domestic issue? The DNI's appearance at this raid, as well as their involvement in seizing voting machines from Puerto Rico, suggests something that should also alarm every American. I believe an organized effort to misuse her national security powers to interfere in domestic politics and potentially provide a pretext for the president's unconstitutional efforts to seize control of the upcoming elections. Don't take my word for it. The president has repeatedly pushed for the nationalization of
So he goes on to talk about the CIA running psyops against the American people, which is something Trump accused them of doing years ago during the Biden administration. But did you hear what he just said right there? He said when we opened up the warrant, there was nothing written in there about foreign influence in the election. What does that tell you, Matt?
That's hilarious.
That he just told you the truth right there. That means that it was our own government who stole the election from President Trump, and that's why she was involved in it, because our own government, of course, isn't our government. It's controlled by something else entirely. I completely agree with pretty much everything that Joe Kent said in his resignation letter. I think that aligns with all the research that I've done. It aligns with everything that I've seen. I think people get really triggered when they read that stuff because they think they immediately associate with Trump, and they're like, well, Joe Kent is accusing Donald Trump of being controlled by. Wait, what? Guys, do you think that Israel just started controlling our government a year ago? Israel's controlled our government for decades. I mean, probably since JFK was shot. And now you think that suddenly, since Donald Trump is back in office, that just stopped? Like Trump got sworn into office and suddenly the foreign influence over our government is just gone? No, I think Trump actually, what he's done is he's totally exposed it. It's now at the center of every political discussion. Why is Israel in control of our government? That is now politicians are being forced to answer those questions. It's happening at the highest levels. Joe Kent's going to be on Tucker Carlson tonight to discuss that, and it's going to be a very highly watched video. I have a 1-minute video that you're going to like. I don't know if you saw this from the meeting that Trump had with the Irish Prime Minister the other day.
No.
Listen, watch this.
Are you rethinking the United States' relationship with NATO possibly getting out?
Well, I'm disappointed.
Oh, yes, I saw this.
We spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. I'd work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine. Look, Ukraine would have been over in one day if we didn't help. Frankly, Ukraine would have been over in the first day. They had the best equipment in the world. It was our equipment given by Sleepy Joe Biden. No charge, no charge. Hundreds of billions of dollars of the best equipment in the world, no charge. I will say that I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, so what he's saying there is that he's considering pulling out of NATO because NATO refuses to go to the Persian Gulf and help, quote unquote, liberate the Strait of Hormuz. And so this conflict, whatever it actually is now being leveraged to basically threaten the existence of NATO. And now we have Donald Tusk, the Polish prime minister, who's a total globalist, fear-mongering or saying that if the right gets into power in Poland, they're planning on leaving the EU. Which is also what Hungary's talking about doing, and Germany's talking about doing. So the EU is going to break up. NATO is going to shut down. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that there are. This is being presented to us as a reckless mistake, Iran war. And I don't like the fact that people are cheerleading the idea of another Middle East war. I'm trying to understand: is there another explanation for why these narratives are being told to us, regardless of what actually is happening kinetically? Why are these narratives happening, and why are they being told to us? Well, look at all these other explanations or the fallout, these net effects of why this is happening. Interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely an accelerationism going on right now and a changing of systems. That's for sure. Probably incompetence is not leading the show. There's probably a lot of thought from above and plan. Again, I'm still on the fence whether or not that plan is actually a good one or something that smells more like sulfur. But appreciate always very much your analysis, your appreciation of a fuller spectrum of reality than most people pay attention to. And so it's good to help formulate our own hypothesis-making powers as we go into the coming weeks. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to have to, unfortunately, round up the show. I got one last ad, actually. I forgot to read one last Badlands. I did find the Badlands shop ad, so I'm going to read that. If you see any really interesting comment or whatever that somebody made a donation and wants to throw in a question, you could scan through that, Gordon, and then and if not, then we'll just close out the show. So here's the last ad for today. Have you checked out the Badlands shop lately? You might be surprised by what you're missing. From thoughtful gifts and unique finds to everyday household essentials and personal care must-haves, there's truly something for everybody at the Badlands shop. But here's what makes it different. Every single purchase you make is so much more than just buying stuff. You're investing directly into the movement. You're empowering American-first businesses, lifting fellow Badlanders, and supporting the creators who are building the community with us. Thank you for being part of this. Your support means everything. Head over now to badlandsmedia.tv/shop or click shop on the main menu at badlandsmedia.tv and discover your new favorite brands. That's badlandsmedia.tv/shop. All right. So any last words from the audience?
We were supposed to start the show with the rant from last week from Eleanor 2000. So we'll do that next week. And Eleanor, I apologize. She was asking about information and reference and resources on the City of London. So yeah, let's make sure next week we start the show with that, because she made that rant at the end when we were shutting down the show last week and we missed it. So we will do that next week. And the other thing I'll point out, I see people in the chat talking about Shia and Sunni. The fact that none of the members of the quote unquote sovereign alliance, as we see it, are all refusing to participate in this war. The Muslims, the Arabs, the Turks, the Europeans, like Italy, Hungary, they're all refusing to participate. China, Russia, no one wants to participate in this. They don't want to be a part of it. They're like, this is not our war. It's not our problem. That's signal to me. All of that is just signal. And again, I go back to Joe Kent's video where he talks about the subversive elements inside of Trump's government that are force him to do or prevent things from happening that are supposed to happen, including military orders to withdraw from countries. So again, interesting data points, and I look at all that stuff as relevant.
Yep, as you should. All right. Thank you, Gordon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us in this week's Breaking History.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.